All right, welcome to Front Porch Radio. I am Julie Wilder, and today is Election Day Eve, you guys. Woo, it's a real nail biter. Kamala and Trump are in a what you might call a dead heat, according to the pollsters. Feels like a little too much like waiting on biopsy results, if you ask me. So questions, are out there. Will democracy survive the night? Will recreational marijuana finally make it across the finish line? Will we make abortion rights legal here in Florida? And will we finally elect our first woman president? Since the polls are as clear as my eyesight without my glasses, I'm turning to the cosmos for insights instead. Some of you might know that one of my side hustles is a line of astrology calendars because I've been so fascinated by the correlation between current events and cosmic influences. I host a monthly Cosmosis astrology session at Spiral Circle Bookstore, and today I've invited astrologer Sarah Kuntz to bring her expertise or their expertise to the table to dissect what the stars indicate for a possible victor and how we can navigate the energies ahead. As an astrologer, Sarah believes astrology serves as a universal language that connects the personal with the collective. By reflecting on the self through the natal birth chart, they see how individual times can reveal connections to broader shared experiences, helping to refine and reassemble personal narratives and guiding mantras. To them, as above, so below means that the ordinary aspects of life are woven with spiritual insights gifted through planetary patterns which invite a responsibility to listen and learn. Sarah's goal is to help others access the unique story imprinted upon them from birth. Welcome to Front Porch Radio, Sarah.
Hi, good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. For some reason, I am not hearing you on... Hold on, let me turn both of these on and up. Say something again, Sarah.
Hi, good to be here.
Yeah, now I can hear you. That's great. Yeah, I'm so glad that you are here. When I was looking at the chart, it's a gnarly one.
Yeah.
I got to say that out loud. And I know we, the people, are just riding those waves of uncertainty right now. And many of us are holding our breaths and feeling like we might just explode at any minute. I know the text messages between my girlfriends have been pretty funny. There's a mixture of existential dread and hope that humanity will pull through for a future that takes us in the direction we want. So we are going to be looking at this astrology chart for Election Day, which is tomorrow. Oh, yeah. And it is gnarly, but we hope that the next hour gives you a way to care for your mental health, dodge the drama, and look for the helpers is what I'm hoping.
For sure. I agree, and I'm hoping that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. Oh, my goodness.
It's hard to know where to start.
It is hard to know where to start. And we are going to be, looking at, possible election predictions as to who the victor is, how long this election might actually take.
Yeah.
We know that it doesn't always, end when we would like, which would be great if it would just happen tomorrow. But that doesn't always happen that way. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is one of the things that I like to do is give people kind of like a lay of the land.
For sure.
To put things into context. And we've got a couple of things that are going on that I think really put like a backdrop to this entire thing. And one of those things that I'll just kind of go over briefly is that we are on the tail end of the USA Pluto return.
Yes.
For those of you that don't know what the heck that means, Pluto, a return is when a planet gets back to the same exact spot it was, like either when you were born or for America, that's, when we formed as a nation.
Yes.
And so what happens is we revisit those themes. So talk about that USA Pluto return for a few minutes. You just kind of, it's been dancing between Capricorn and Aquarius. It's been in Capricorn mostly since 2008, and then starting in 2003, it started going back and forth between Aquarius and Capricorn, and we're like literally in that last little minute of Capricorn Pluto.
Yeah, when on November 19th, I believe, is when Pluto officially moves into Aquarius, which is definitely going to be relieving for some of my like Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, Aries placements. Like they're going to feel like Pluto's not on their neck so much, asking them to like transform. revisit their relationship with money. In 2008, when Pluto first moved into Capricorn, like obviously the things I think about is like Obama was elected and also like the financial recession. And that's kind of when recession pop was like really popular. And you had hits like Kesha like kind of coming in and stuff too. So I feel like when Pluto officially moves into Aquarius, we're still going to have, because it's still Saturn ruled, Saturn rules like Capricorn and Aquarius, we're still going to have conversations about like decaying parts of democracy. What are things that need to change like from the beginning?
Like the Electoral College.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that will definitely be something that even other than the Pluto opposition and the Pluto return, we're still going to have, and that change into Aquarius, the Electoral College and like even the electing like system and like how the House of Representatives can like call for a certain like voter and stuff, like that whole system is definitely going to be re-examined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this Pluto return, by the way, this is basically why we've had the Capitol insurrection, the Tea Party, this conflict between absolute rule and democracy. That was the founding nation, right? We had a Tea Party, we had absolute rule versus we had a monarchy versus democracy. You know, we had insurrections. We also had a pandemic during that time. And so the fact that it is about to move into Aquarius, that is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. You know, so Aquariuses are usually more humanitarian, and Capricorn is more like success-driven, pinnacle, like I'm getting to the top, right? Yeah. And so this is going to be a pretty big contrast between Capricorn and Aquarius energy.
For sure.
Now, the other thing happening in the backdrop is Saturn and Neptune have been in Pisces. And that's kind of a big deal. This is basically Pisces is the constellation. I kind of refer to it as Fantasia. It is a very like watery, like, things aren't clear.
Yeah.
You know,
as a Pisces, I can attest to
yeah,
that. Yeah,
absolutely. And so this is where a lot of our conspiracy theories, propaganda, delusions, escapism, fantasy over facts, deep fakes, unreality, addictions, all of those kinds of things, as well as the rise of virtual reality with, being like fooled by essentially virtual reality to think it's real.
Yeah.
And so this has been going on since 2003. They both, Saturn and Neptune, both went in. One went in March, one went in June of 2023. And then it's gone into Aries in 2020. It's going to go into Aries in 2025. So we're still in this energy of kind of like, talk about like Saturn and Neptune, how they behave in Pisces, because you're probably better at explaining that than I am.
For sure. So what I'm looking forward to in Neptune and Aries is kind of like, you already brought it up, like the use of like AI and stuff like that. I'm hoping that there's going to be a little bit more creative control. Like the one benefit of having like AI tools like so accessible for people is that it's going to make creating art and creating movies and creating sound and music, like it's going to be way more in the hands of the individual, which Aries rules and stuff. So that's a benefit that I'm hoping will come when Neptune moves into Aries. But definitely when Saturn kind of like follows through with Neptune, I think a lot more conspiracy theories are going to be more in like the normalized language. Like still, I feel like as Neptune is in Pisces, a lot of like the conspiracy theories are still kind of in these like dark online spaces that we don't normally see in like mainstream culture, like kind of like bring to the forefront. But I feel like because Neptune and Aries like being like such polar opposite energy, I feel like it's going to feel a lot like kind of like punching your way through the fog.
Right.
Like just kind of like not knowing what you're fighting, but still kind of like being passionate about like what you believe and stuff too.
Right. So that's going to be coming in March of next year. But right now we're still in that fog, like that,
sure.
And so Saturn is also, I don't know, he's kind of like the general, would you say, of the zodiac?
I call him like Big Daddy Saturn.
Daddy Saturn.
Because he is kind of patriarchal. Like he does enjoy being in Capricorn, which definitely I would associate, even though it's a feminine sign, I would still like associate it with those more like patriarchal, like traditional qualities. That is going to be the nice thing when Pluto moves into Aquarius.
No. We're talking about Saturn now.
Oh no, I know.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that like.
Oh, sorry.
No. You're totally good. So like, because Saturn is like more that like Big Daddy, like patriarchal energy,
and he's like kind of He's kind of like smoke and mirrors inside of Pisces, right?
Yeah, he's uncomfortable in Pisces,
right?
Just because like Saturn is all about boundaries and borders, and Pisces like literally dissolves like in your hands. Like it doesn't love to be in Aries either, though. Saturn is exalted in Libra, meaning that like he enjoys like balance and democracy and like kind of likes to be contained in that relational way. So when it's in its opposite sister sign into Aries, I think that's when you're going to see a little bit more of that, like, what are we fighting for kind of energy kind of going into it.
Yeah, and that'll be in May of next year.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
But right now, one of the things that we've been dealing with is these outer planets essentially in some really kind of like hazy, with Saturn and Neptune being in hazy Pisces. And then Pluto having been in Capricorn, which is just kind of like,
patriarchal.
Very patriarchal. Yeah. And so that's been happening for a while. And that's what we've been just dealing with for quite a while now. And so then we get into other areas of the chart. And what I essentially did, you guys, is I pulled up the actual astrological chart we decided on doing 11 p.m. in Los Angeles tomorrow night. Because we thought that might be when most of the election results are coming in.
Yeah, and also, like, I feel like California is, like, it represents so much of our country, and, like, so many people that, like, live in California, like, represent a lot of the, like, issues that are kind of played, some of the, like, derogatory statements that are being like stated. But yeah, that's why we picked Los Angeles, just because like of how many people are there. It's also, I would have picked Washington DC as well. It is a Cancer rising too, but like I do like that Los Angeles is a Leo rising, just so we can like keep track of that like Mars into like Leo ingress very clearly.
Oh yeah, we got some big Leo energy coming our way. And one of the things let me give that like a little bit of an overview, and then we'll kind of drill down into each of the planets.
For sure.
So we have, one of the other things I like to work with is something called Sabian symbols. And so a Sabian symbol, for those of you who are not familiar with, it's an archetype for every single degree in the zodiac. There's 360 degrees in a zodiac sign. Okay. So there's 30 degrees in each sign, and then 360 for the entire zodiac. And so there's a system that's been created that basically gives you an archetypical energy. And that's really, I like to work with archetypes as well. So I'll just kind of give you the overview. So the moon and Pluto during the chart tomorrow are both in Capricorn. And if you're not familiar with Capricorn energy, think of this show Yellowstone. I feel like that's very like Capricorn-y. And it is, that's Taurus. I have this wrong on my thing. At Capricorn, I think of as Wakanda, like the excellence of Wakanda, and a little bit dark, right? So I have to fix my chart later because I misnamed it to be that. And so what the Sabian symbols for that is a secret meeting of men and an angel carrying a harp. So I have like this imagery of like this like chessboard that's like dark and like facing off, and then behind that is like this horizon of like people holding hands and like some angelic can be religious like confusion, but it can also be like trying to find the people that care. So there's with anything, there's always like a dark and a light side, right? So
Totally.
You can be twisted and turned in a positive direction or a negative direction. Then we have so the degrees that Saturn and Pisces and Neptune happen to be in Pisces are a famous sword and a fertile garden, essentially. So I feel like it's very much like a who will pull the sword from the stone kind of moment, right?
Yeah. Well, I love that too, because like later in the month when like we have a full moon in Taurus happening on the 15th, like those are going to make a really nice like sextile to each other. And I love like the idea of like fertile grounds under like full moons. Like full moons is when things kind of like come to fruition. So like hopefully good things, hoping that good things kind of sprout like with that energy too. Because that's like a nice, and with like Saturn sextiling like the full moon like later in that month too, I'm hoping for like a healing kind of energy or an invitation
on the full moon?
to heal. Yeah.
Yes, we're going to need that.
Yeah, for sure. But I loved that like a fertile garden under the moon was like the meaning of that, because I was like, thank God.
Yeah.
Because that perfectly encapsulates what like Taurus and Pisces being in relationship together. Like that totally like represents like their relationship too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now over in in Gemini, we have Jupiter, which is, I think of Gemini as like the big city. It's all about communications. And the degree that Jupiter is at, the Sabian symbol is essentially a tumultuous labor demonstration. So, very much 1% versus the 99% energy. You, of course, have labor demonstrations that are going on right now. But again, it's people riled up for equitable treatment. So that's very, very important. For sure. And then we also have Uranus in Taurus. Now, Taurus is what I correlate with Yellowstone, the show. And so the Sabian symbol, the degree that it is at, is a charismatic, woos their audience essentially. And the lesson there is like, just remember that love is blind, because it could be, a nice, sweet serenade and everybody falls in love, and you're going to see this in political speeches,
Totally.
People trying to get their message across and things like that. And so, the question is, making sure that this person isn't just sweet talking us, but is genuine in their aims, I guess you could say.
And when later in the week, when like Mercury enters its shadow period in Sagittarius too, it's going to make that nice square to that Uranus too. So like, I know what you're exactly talking about, where it's like over-promising, like big proclamations. I do think like there may be some like early announcements that get announced that maybe get pulled back later, especially because it's in the beginning of that like Mercury retrograde period too.
What kind of announcements?
Maybe an announcement of an early win, maybe an overconfidence in a voting of a state, like identifying if like they're gonna like go for
something that might get called wrong incorrectly.
Yeah,
okay.
I do think like in general, if you like you wanted like the full overlay of like what I think in terms of like the Mercury retrograde shadow period starting this week, as well as it's officially starting November 25th and ends, I believe, like December 6th, as well as like we're beginning that cycle of like the Leo Mars retrograde soon. I think a lot of recalls could happen. A lot of news outlets have been throwing around a contingent election and like saying that there might need to be a call from like a House representative or like the Speaker of the House, like saying like who actually like wins and stuff. Kind of like that Neptune influence that you were talking about earlier too, that Pisces Neptune. That is unfortunately something that I think gets a little hazy, a little crazy, and like Pisces Neptune is that like conspiracy theories can like kind of like come into people's like reasonings too. So like if there is a call for a recall, and also like Sagittarius is also ruled by Jupiter, and it's like just in the same way like kind of like conspiratorial too. I do think like there are going to be like kind of like similar to like 3-ish years ago where like people were saying like the election should have been like this way, you know what I mean? Or like this person like should have won. We might see themes of that happening again.
Oh, I think we can guarantee that.
Yeah, for sure. Just like how much
I mean, I don't need the stars to help back me up on that one.
Yeah, just so much like mutable energy. I personally love like a Jupiter Gemini placement. Like it is technically like in its fall, but it is going to be in Kamala's like first house, which is really nice. And it is also going to be in like Trump's 11th house as well. So like they both are like kind of getting like the benefits of that Jupiter placement. But I do think like, I don't know, this might be a little messy. I would just never suggest the United States to have an election during the shadow period of a Mercury retrograde.
I mean, that doesn't seem like a wise move.
Yeah, I don't know who their astrologer is, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty funny the way that things shake out according to astrology with every election, honestly. So let's keep going through the planets a little bit, though, because again, we're looking at the chart for election day, actually election night at 11 p.m.
Yes.
Casted basically 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, because we figured that would be when we would be seeing the majority of votes coming in and kind of catching the vibe. A lot of this energy, though, is playing out throughout the day and has even been playing out already and into the next week.
Yeah.
The next planet that we have to look at is Mars, and it is just entering Leo. It went into Leo just 2 days ago. Leo, if you need an archetype for that, I call it a movie set. Very dramatic, very Showtime, not demure. And unfortunately, when I looked at this, it's at the degree a case of apoplexy, which apoplexy, I had to look up what that word meant. It's apocalyptic in terms of like how we're feeling. It's almost like a very passionate anger, but kind of like a paralyzed, like I might have a stroke kind of vibe.
Amazing.
I know, right? Don't we just love that energy for today? I mean, we're pretty much in that energy right now.
We just entered it today. Yeah.
And so the advice I have for that is stay Kamala and carry Anala.
Oh did you make that up?
No, it was on Saturday Night Live.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
She did a cold open. And so it is going to be very, very tense. And we're actually going to we're not going to talk about it just yet, but there's a Mars-Pluto opposition that is happening. So once we get through all the planets, I'm sure we'll talk about that because that's gnarly. This is probably the gnarliest thing in the chart to me is looking at this Mars in Leo at that apocalyptic degree of just passionate. We're going to be looking at, making sure that if you're going to the polls tomorrow, and of course, a lot of people are going to be turning out to the polls tomorrow, you're going to want to be in, to put on your headphones, be in de-escalation mode. Don't allow yourself to be caught up in anything.
No.
Just really, really try to stay calm because the energy is kind of like a firecracker right now.
Yeah. Bring a buddy, bring some black turmeric like in your pocket.
Yeah.
Like, just anything you can do to protect yourself.
Make sure you had a snack before you go in, and that's for, we're going to be having like a election watch party at my house tomorrow night with for the kids actually, which is awesome that all of her friends are so into politics.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, like just making sure that you're trying to stay as light as possible and what's going to happen is going to happen and we're probably not going to know tomorrow night. I know one of the things that this energy looks like to me is for because initially when all of the electoral votes start coming in, typically Republicans will be looking like they're leading in the electoral college, and it won't be until 9, 10, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time that we'll start seeing electoral states closing, and then that Democratic vote will start coming in. So that is something that people need to just be aware of, that it's going to, don't be freaking out earlier in the evening when you see it going one way, just,
Yeah, as well as just be careful about maybe if you see some people gathering in the street too, maybe just stay away and keep to yourself tonight.
Just hang out with family.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely in that same vein of what I was saying. I think there may be some early announcements, and definitely prioritize your mental health and what you need to do to stay safe during maybe some of those early announcements.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then the next couple of planets in the sky, Venus and Mercury, those are going to be in Sagittarius, which my archetype for Sagittarius is the playa. For those of you that know, that's the Burning Man atmosphere. And this is the Sabian symbols for this are essentially a bluebird on the threshold, which is a really happy, positive sign, and a wise owl in a tree over there in Sagittarius. So this, to me, is just very idealistic, but also pragmatic.
Totally.
And so again, playing in with the rest of the chart, it could be just this idea of that's what we're striving for is domestic bliss. We want to be, having this ideal home. I have a picture of the White House right here, with a little bluebird in front of it. And so that's definitely going to be on everybody's mind. But I think there's also with that wise owl, Sabian symbol in play too. It's also okay, the ideal, but we're also very pragmatic because this is a close call.
Yeah, I loved reading an old owl up in a tree. That made me so happy reading that this morning. I was
this little Venus, what's going on in Sagittarius gives me a little hope.
Yeah.
A little bit of hope. And then the sun is going to be in Scorpio, and the Sabian symbol for that is children playing essentially in a sandbox. And so that's reminding us to not disconnect from our inner child. See that if we can, if you can distract yourself by playing games with the family,
for sure.
Tomorrow, doing anything that you can to just kind of, wait out the news while we're waiting for it. So But yeah, let's get into this Mars in Leo, Pluto in, are we still in Capricorn? I think we are.
Yeah, so
We're at the last degree of Capricorn, which, by the way, is I have a very like Darth Vader kind of like executive board meeting kind of vibe. The 29th degree of Capricorn. When we talk about the last gasp of the patriarchy, I think they're talking about the 29th degree of Capricorn.
Yeah, and also like the not invention of Pluto, but like kind of the discovery of Pluto happened around a time that like fascism was like on the rise and like definitely like addressed in like the media a lot more. So definitely like when it goes into those like harsher degrees, like the 29th degree or the 0 degree, you're going to see a lot more of like that accumulative buildup and that like sign and vibe. And like, I agree with you where I think of like patriarchal vibes, but I also think of like fascist rhetoric that's like a little bit more common. I think about how in some of like the polls, like in like the last like couple of weeks, like there's been some attacks that have been like happening. Like, I don't know if you saw in like Oregon, there was like a box of like votes.
Mailboxes, yeah.
Yeah, or like I think it's like Neptune Beach in Florida, there was like a teenager running around with like a machete. And like, that's kind of what I think about when I think about like Capricorn living in like Pluto and like all that like accumulative energy of like the patriarchy and like fascism, like knowing that its time is like, because Aquarius is like not a zodiac sign that it's humanitarian as you addressed, but it's like also like very like outward of itself. It's definitely like more in tune with like the collective narratives. And I think patriarchy and fascism like knows in terms of like the American rhetoric, like I think like they kind of know that like its time is like gonna die, especially in like this new like kind of age of Aquarius like ushering in. So it needs to either find like a new way to live in terms of like hiding and maybe like technology, or it's just going to go out with kind of a bang. And I feel like that opposition that's happening, like really that started happening yesterday and has been kind of growing like for a while. So like if you're a Cancer or Leo placement and you've been feeling like a little icky the last like couple of months, that could be why.
Well,
you know?
Okay, so let's get the lay of the land. So we have Mars in dramatic Leo. Mars is aggression, action, the masculine, right,
also like our sex drive,
passion. It's pure passion. It's also super dramatic. Come on, I'm a Leo, so I can say that. So it's at this 0 degree, which is like a very like difficult emotional reactions, becoming fired up about something, charging off in all directions at once.
Totally.
It can be emotional suppression as well, taking things too seriously. Mm-hmm. So that is happening. And now it is literally opposite in the sky from Pluto and Capricorn, which is that last gasp of the patriarchy, and they're facing off. Explain what that face off means. What is an opposition?
So an opposition in astrology is like literally a mathematical point that just kind of like communicates like tension between two planets and zodiac signs that are either like not compatible with each other, or they're sister signs like Cancer and Capricorn, meaning they like are on the opposite side of like the astrological wheel, and they also just like don't work well together. Normally, if like you see in someone's chart, someone has like a sextile or a trine, that's usually, that language usually like communicates a harmonious relationship. Where here, like, I would be nervous if like Mars and Pluto were really ganging up and working together anyway, like in a conjunction. But an opposition definitely still makes me a little nervous, just because like tensions are kind of high. Like I think of like what you said with Mars being like our anger, and Pluto kind of being like some of the more like darker themes we experience like in the world and in society as well. So those being like together, I think a lot more of like, and especially like Leo being like more boisterous, more expression. I personally feel like what we're going to see more with like Leo and like Pluto is maybe going to see a lot more like louder, more bolder proclamations for like what people believe, versus when it retrogrades back into Cancer. Like Mars hates being in Cancer. That's like Mars'
like
least
crybaby
favorite
energy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, so Mars, like the archetype of Mars for me is the street fighter. Okay?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great word to say.
Like they're the street fighter. So this is like people like in the streets, which, I think we're all wondering what's going to happen, and so because like if we have a Kamala win, we all know that an insurrection was already, has already happened once. People are bracing, even if Kamala does win, they're bracing for what the fallout is going to be. Totally. But then on the other side, if Trump were to win, people would be up in arms on the other side as well. I don't know if literally up in arms, because that's not really, but there would be action, there would be organizing, there would be a lot of activism going on, essentially.
Of course, because I feel like a lot of this like Sagittarius energy we've had recently, especially like Mercury being in Sagittarius, like a lot of like inflammatory, derogative like terms and like stereotyping people and statements too, like should have like a response to. I do think it's like interesting though that when Mars does retrograde back into Cancer, it's retrograding on January 6th, the anniversary of
January 6th.
Yeah, so
you're right.
Yeah, and then it like doesn't station direct till April. So I do think people should be prepared for maybe like either long conversations with people about maybe who can't accept the winnings, right, or also just like being prepared of like how long this recall could go, how long like this early announcement could go. I just think people should be prepared to maybe like
be in it for the long haul.
Yeah, be in it for the long haul, buckle in. Like if you need to like turn off your phone like on like for like one night, that's totally fine, but just like know that like you may need to develop some like coping mechanisms to like fully like digest like what we may experience.
Yeah, and normally a Mars Leo a Mars Pluto opposition would only be like a couple of days, but because we have some retrogrades going on, what we have is Mars just went into Leo on the 2nd, and then we've had yesterday and today we've had this Mars has been trining Mercury in Sagittarius,
for sure,
which is that dramatic and reframed rhetoric. And then really from the 1st to the 6th, we have that Mars in Leo opposition to Pluto and Capricorn. So that's just, all encompassing this election intensity. Mars goes retrograde, which means it starts going backwards in the zodiac on December 6th. And then it has another opposition on January 6th, or not, well, preferably from the 1st to the 6th is the energy of that opposition.
Yeah,
but what's interesting is that Aquarius will be in the first, Pluto will be in Aquarius instead of where it is right now, which is in that last degree of Capricorn. Yeah. So what do you think might shift there? Because we'll basically be revisiting, it is the anniversary of the January 6th thing, which at the very end of this, Mars also, so we're going to have like that Mars entering Cancer on the 6th. So we're at that kind of last degree of Leo, and then into Cancer. And so we have this like late stage Leo, early Cancer Mars energy. And then we have that in opposition to Pluto in Aquarius now.
Yeah. So I do think like the Aquarian energy, I think, will help like season maybe some of the more like collectivist like vibes where it's like you're more thinking of like people outside of yourself. Capricorn and Leo like tend to like really look to themselves as like their own authority because they know best, but like Aquarius is more likely to lean on others for answers and stuff. So I'm hoping that like if there is like a violent, like if we do witness something violent, like I'm hoping that like everybody who witness it will feel morally and personally responsible in terms of like how they live their day-to-day life, like maybe re-examine like just things that maybe we don't acknowledge or say just like out of like peace or just out of like just fear of like making a relative like upset.
Right.
Like I'm hoping like a lot more people are going to feel some like personal responsibility for like the larger conversations that are that have kind of felt like they've been trying to be like under the rug in the country for a while, but like I think those are just going to come out naturally. So I'm hoping that people will like integrate those into their like moral and like personal politics too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And kind of ask the questions of like who's free if I'm free but they're not free, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Actually, and I think that in a large way, this entire election cycle has been about the control model versus the care model.
Totally.
And that's been that's been a very big frustration for many of us. Now, I want to ask you, the last Mars Pluto opposition, it's Mars in Leo versus Pluto in Aquarius. Both will be at 3 degrees. That's late April, April 25th through 28th.
And it's also an eclipse season too. That happens in April as well.
Okay. So do you feel like this like Pluto, what is the kind of the theme of this Pluto Mars opposition? It's hitting at 3 different times, and clearly because it's initiating right around the election, we're going to be revisiting those themes every single time.
Totally. I did hear from an astrologer last year that like the Leo Venus retrograde that happened like during the time the Barbie movie came out, I do think that is going to be part of this like larger narrative of the Mars Leo retrograde too. I think like addressing like patriarchy is definitely going to be a topic for sure. Like if I had to like address like the violence that comes with like toxic masculinity, like where I think it would be addressed, I think in that time frame it will be addressed. Like also I think in like terms of like,
do you think that could mean like, okay, say Kamala wins? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's just spitball.
Sure.
Do you think that means that Trump might, I probably should have asked you this.
No, go ahead.
But I'm like, well, does that mean that he might actually be held accountable and be put in prison? Because I know he's supposed to be like facing that on the other side.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to bring up their rising signs because like Kamala is a Gemini rising, so like Jupiter's in her first house. That's obviously a great like transit to have. Like Jupiter being your first house indicates like you are like being lucky just based off of you, yourself, and your charisma, and that's great for a president, right? But also Trump having the Gemini like Jupiter transit in his 11th house is also a nice one in terms of like audiences, which is why I'm more like, okay, maybe some followers per se or some fans of somebody is going to like act out because they know the cost of like losing the election. Like I think if Trump loses the election, he knows he's going to go to jail.
Right.
So like I think like he's feeling
which he's thus far avoided his whole life.
Yeah. I think honestly, like he knows, like also just like Mars literally being in his first house as well, he's going to be a little more irritated, a little more inflamed than normal. So I think like he knows that, and he's going to be a little more like okay with violence himself too. So I do think like in terms of like that interaction of like where Jupiter is in his 11th house, I think like he knows what's on the line for him, and it's likely. And I think he knows, like, if whoever he calls to action, if they're not successful, he absolutely will go to jail. Because at that point, he's more of a liability than he already is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, okay, the question everybody's like, why haven't you asked this question yet, Julie? Who do you think's going to win the election?
Okay, I personally think Kamala is going to win. And I've kind of known that for a while, which definitely like gave me peace, but I have been like nervous in terms of like looking at like the Mars and Pluto opposition as well as like what's happening in like Trump's house. So like I do think Kamala will be maybe announced the winner, or she may just like eventually be anointed the winner. But I do think like there is going to be some ruckus with that announcement, and at that point it's kind of like I just feel like this is something that like the whole country should lament on themselves. Like they should have the chance to like grieve over the fact that like they shouldn't feel like this. Like they shouldn't feel like if like their candidate loses, or like if this person wins, that means like violence is just like something that could be like there. Like nobody should feel like that. And I think like when I do think Kamala wins, I do think it's going to be maybe like a bittersweet victory, because I do think like a lot of people are going to be like, why did the violence have to happen like for us to like get here? Right. Or like, why is this so normal in this country to like see to like kind of like just be like, oh, there was a shooting or there was a rally. Like, it's just like, why is that like so normal like in this country? So like, I want to say like I think she's going to win like happily, but like I do know that there's just like
there's going to be a backlash to that.
There's going to be some drama, like
and that's bearing out in the stars. I mean, are you just basing this on what you want, or is there
no.
Is there like backup in the stars?
Yeah,
because we want the polls are not, the polls are just like, it's neck and neck. It's 49-49.
Yeah.
We don't know what's about to happen. And we're all, I mean, I have friends that are like, I just can't keep looking at them. And then I get sent 3 more articles about like, this is what another pollster says,
Yeah.
And so like, like in uncertain times, people are looking for certainty. And since I'm not getting any indications from the polls, I want to know what the stars are saying to back that up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. I just like with how much like energy has been in like Pisces as well. And in 2025, the reason why astrologers have been saying that year is like kind of crazy is just because like there's so much of an energetic shift that happens next year. Neptune is going to move into Aries. We have the new like eclipse cycle in Pisces and Virgo, which is going to be right next to that Pisces and Saturn, which is going to leave like relatively soon, like in 2026, but like we're still dealing with themes like that. So like just seeing how, and then we also have like Pluto and Aquarius. So like just seeing how much like change, because like really if you look at Kamala and Trump's chart, you could kind of like indicate a potential win, whether it's an electoral win or like a violent win.
Right.
Like you could determine that in like both of their charts, but just knowing how much astrological change is happening next year, I couldn't see like a country who maybe some people like benefit from Trump. Like I would say like people who like he more represents a darker side of like the United States. Like I couldn't see like that like radical shift change happening with somebody who like embodies some of these more archaic sides of the country that like a lot of people are trying to move away from. That's just how I like personally feel.
Right.
Just seeing like the vibe switch up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And knowing that it's an Aquarius and Pisces, those are like very like humanitarian signs.
Yeah.
So, but if they were in like maybe like a Mars like dominated, like that's why I do think like with the Neptune in Aries, like I do think like maybe people are gonna like have a lot more conversations with their more like conspiratorial friends and like relatives and stuff too. But if a lot more of that energy was like in Capricorn or in like Mars dominated zodiac signs like Scorpio and Aries, I'd maybe be like, oh, the vibes are shifting next year, but in a way that like I'm like scared. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
right.
I do think like people should be prepared. Like people should be prepared.
It's not going to be easy.
No, definitely not.
It's even though we're in a nail biter right now, it's still going to be dicey on the other side. And can we just say, of course, if we elect a woman, a black woman, to be president, it can't just be a happy thing. You know what I'm saying? We can't just be like, ooh, and everyone can't just celebrate together like the day, like when we voted for Obama, like the whole nation voted for Obama and we were all like, we did that, and it's just going to be, of course, marred by all of this, instigation.
Yeah. And like with Obama becoming president, like I believe like that's kind of when like QAnon started like making a lot of their conspiratory. So like, with maybe every like elected person who we feel like more embodies some of the direction that we're trying to go towards, we're always going to have
that backlash.
Yeah, that backlash. Because I agree with you. Because like I'm just hoping that like I said earlier, like with like Pluto moving into Aquarius, I'm hoping a lot more people are going to like feel more like personal responsibilities. Like they're not going to be like, oh, I'm just not into politics. Like if someone says something like,
I mean, Tim Wall says, too bad. Politics is into you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like it's harder. And I think also you could say this with like literally like climate disaster or like any other like topics that we're like experiencing right now as a collective. Like you can just not ignore. You cannot ignore anything that's like happening around you. And I think like hard conversations are going to turn more likely into actions for people, which I think is a good thing. Like I think that's a good thing that like people feel responsible to be like engaged in their like local communities, to like participate in like mutual aid networks. You know what I mean?
I will say months and months and months ago, I tuned in. I was like, who's going to win the election according to astrology? And I Googled it. Yeah.
What did you see?
I came across, her name's Catherine Urban. Okay. And she did this really, for those of you that don't understand how astrology works, the chart we pulled was just looking at the energy of election day.
Mm-hmm.
In order to figure out who wins, you actually have to look at their chart compared to the USA's chart, compared to the election day chart.
And past winners.
And past winners.
Yeah.
The Republican Party, the Democratic Party. You have to do all of this analysis, which is like, months worth of freaking research.
Yeah.
And so she did all of that. And what she actually, I looked at it before Biden stepped down, and she basically saw to the evening, she was like, I think he's going to be talking with another woman about stepping down. And he did exactly when she said, and she said, I don't know, before she even knew that was even a question, before they were even trying to get Biden down, she said, I don't know what's going to happen, but for some reason, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I think Kamala is going to be the nominee, and I don't think Joe is going to be in. And then that's what happened. So I was like, all right, this lady knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, that's some great predictive astrology.
So amazingly predictive. And so then she looked at Kamala's chart versus Trump's chart for election night, and she was saying that from her analysis, she felt same as you, Kamala is going to win. Kamala is going to win. But what was interesting to her was that both Trump and Kamala basically grow in power post-election.
Yeah.
And the kind of like do thing that she said was that the thing that Trump is most known for, like his legacy, hasn't happened yet. It will happen post-election.
That is so
scary. She didn't say what it was. Maybe he's going to jail. I don't know. Maybe he gets busted out of jail. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it, it was something that was very, by the way, the assassination attempts on Trump were also predicted by many astrologers around the world, honestly.
Yeah, that was, I believe, the Mars-Uranus conjunction too. Yeah, that was definitely kind of, and being in Taurus, opposing Scorpio too, that shows some resiliency, in terms of those assassinated attempts too. So definitely the flavor of the zodiac sign of these grand aspect changes we're witnessing will definitely help tell the story of what we can expect and stuff too. I love how you connect Leo to a movie set, because that is, I think, how the violence may kind of turn out itself. It will be very theatrical, very dramatic, very inflamed, and which stinks because Leos are their natural expression is creative. I think of them as people who do Shakespeare in the Park, very jovial, and so I don't know, it just stinks that some TV personality behavior may come out and affect people with maybe real consequences. Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to look at the stars to know that.
No, but it's nice to have it affirmed. Yeah, because I feel it's just, I love astrology because it's you get to kind of, it doesn't tell you the full story of what's going to happen to you, but you get a flavor of it and you can prepare for the type of energy, how you want to utilize it. Right.
And so what we're doing here today, one of the reasons I love looking at astrology is because it helps depersonalize what's going on in a way that you're basically this Mars in Leo opposite Pluto in Capricorn. What we're trying to tell you is that there is an atmospheric, just it's a thunderstorm. It is inclement weather, and what needs to happen is that, in inclement weather, what do? Well, you either stay home or you put on your galoshes and, have a umbrella, And so that's basically what we're trying to tell you guys is what the space weather is like. Yeah. And so we can't see it in the form of precipitation or blizzards or, things like that. But it's an energetic, gravitational impulse. It's a vibe. It's a symphony of vibes coming from the star system around us. And what you can do with this information is you can settle in your mind, okay, this isn't going to be over quickly. We are in it for the long haul. What can I do to de-escalate, to try to remain calm? Sure. What can I do to, especially pull for that inner child thing, to be pragmatic and wise about what is going on, but also not forget to give yourself self-care and be gentle with everybody. Everybody in America, no matter what side you're on, is pretty much like, "Argh!"
Yeah, and that's just, and I think like a lot of people are going to get more question asking themselves, like, is that normal? Is that normal? We all are like feeling that way. I agree with you. Like, the vagueness and the predictions are like honestly more freeing than they are like doom scrolly, because like you yourself are like an agent of that energy too. Like the energy that like interacts with you, like just because like we're maybe predicting like some like violence that we could like witness as like a country doesn't mean like that violence is going to be like necessarily like at your front door.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like how you respond to that violence, like, well, if you are a Leo rising, I would definitely maybe encourage you to like work out at home. Just maybe like, like go on a step or something, or go on a walk. Like you got to like utilize that energy. But everybody else, I definitely like think you have a chance to like interact with the energy how you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're right. The only thing you control is yourself, right?
Yeah, totally.
So we only have a few more minutes left. Is there anything else that when you were looking at the charts, you were like, oh, I really want to make sure that I touch on this? Is there something that kind of stands out for you?
For sure. I definitely think that Sagittarius Mercury retrograde that starts November 25th and goes through December 15th. But we're in its shadow period, like I think starting November 6th. But we could already be feeling like the shadow effects right now. I do think that Mercury retrograde is going to be a little bit of a doozy. I hate that it's like happening around Thanksgiving time, where I think a lot of people are going to have hard conversations with their relatives.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So maybe just like
Friendsgiving.
Yeah, exactly. But like, yeah, I don't love that. Like, I don't love, like, in terms of, like, I love retrogrades in the way that, like, you review yourself and, like, you reassess, like, what you want.
Yeah, but not
and,
when
like,
we're, like, counting votes, right?
No. That's, like, that's, like, me, a dyscalculia person, like, counting, like, all the votes. Like, I'm just, like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can take my astrologer hat off for a second and put on my political analyst hat and my intuitive hat, I have to say, I think that the stars are backing up a Kamala win, but I also think that she's going to win in the popular vote by a zillion miles.
Yeah.
I think she's going to win in the Electoral College. I do think it's going to be contested. I do think there's going to be, delays there, but I do think that my hope is that it's such a resounding affirmation of what the nation stands for. You have a lot of women that are the gap between men and women turning out to vote is significant right now in the early voting. Now we don't know what's going to happen because election day, decides everything.
Yeah. Did you see that commercial?
Which one?
The one that was targeting Republican women who are like married to Republican men. There's been apparently a lot of positive like reactions like to that commercial too.
Yeah. I mean, there's unfortunately men are still trying to control their wives' votes out there. And so, there's rumors of men making their wives vote mail-in ballot so that they can supervise the vote, which is just disgusting. And you're clearly voting for the wrong person as a woman. Right. But I will say that, there are a lot of, I have been heartened to see a lot of Republicans that do not identify with MAGA that have been coming out and coming, basically, saying we got to vote for Kamala.
Yeah, for sure.
So, oh man. So if you guys are wondering who we are, this is Front Porch Radio. I have a show here at Rollins College every Monday at 4 p.m. And Sarah and I will be doing a cosmosis analysis tomorrow, actually, at Spiral Circle at 6 p.m. So Spiral Circle Bookstore, you can hear about this and look over the chart with us. Right before election, there's actually, I think Ito Boy next door is having like an election watch party. So you can come at 6 and talk with us about the stars, and then go hang out with your fellow people and watch the election. Information go down. And then also I am posting, I figured out a really beautiful way to create, I'm very visual. And so I'm a graphic designer by my former trade. And so I needed visuals because I couldn't understand astrology with all of the like technical details. I needed visuals. And so
your visuals are great, like
Yeah.
very beginner friendly. Like I love, very eye catching.
That's what I wanted, is for people who are like new to astrology to be able to like begin to understand it and synthesize it. So this chart is up at spiralspectrum.com right now. You can go look at it, and I will probably be posting what we're talking about will also be posted on there, hopefully by the end of the night.
Yeah.
So Sarah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming in.
Oh my gosh.
Is there a way that people can connect with you? Do you do chart readings?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Sarah Kuntz, Kuntz 16. I will be at Honey Hill Vintage's birthday event like later in November. I believe it's November like 23rd. So yeah, hop by. I do readings. I do tarot readings as well, but I kind of do anything, like any questions you have astrologically. If you want to do something predictive, you just want to get a lay of the land, how to assess like some trauma that you experienced like earlier in life. Like I do it. I do anything.
Yeah. Awesome. Right on. Well, you guys take care of yourself. Do things that get that aggression out in a good way. Like go for a run, hit the gym, have your honey work out the aggression with you in a nice way, dancing or, friskiness in the bedroom, whatever it is that you need to use that passionate energy that is inside of you to smash some things, at your house. Like,
go to a rage room.
Yeah, do whatever. Calms forte, calming teas, meditation, those are some things that you can reach for as well. It is going to be a historic election.